free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. President Trump refused to rule out deploying U.S. ground troops to Iran, saying they would be used if necessary, while warning that a major new wave of strikes is imminent. Operation Epic Fury has already killed Iran's supreme leader and senior officials, with at least 4 U.S. service members dead and 18 injured.
The purpose of this fast-growing missile program was to shield their nuclear weapon development and make it extraordinarily difficult for anyone to stop them from making these highly forbidden by us nuclear weapons. We were the ones that were complaining. We were the ones that wanted it stopped. But everybody was behind us. They just didn't have the courage to say so.
Memorials and prayer services in Sydney and Melbourne mourning Ayatollah Ali Khamenei sparked outrage among Australian politicians and members of the Iranian diaspora. Several mosques and Shia community centers posted tributes referring to Khamenei's martyrdom following his death in U.S.-Israeli strikes. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns condemned the commemorations as atrocious, citing the Iranian regime's record of repression and executions. Iranian and Australian community leaders also expressed alarm, calling public displays of sympathy dangerous. Executive Council of Australian Jewry co-CEO Alex Rishin urged criminal investigations, noting Iran-linked terrorist activity in Australia and warning against glorifying extremists. Senator Lindsey Graham called for continued assassinations of Iranian leaders if successors remain hostile to U.S. interests, following the killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei in the U.S.-Israeli operation.
In my time and energy to President Trump, you did something everybody talked about. You took Maduro down. Everybody talked about it. You did it. You took the Ayatollah down. Again, the goal of this operation is to make sure there will never be in Iran a state sponsor of terrorism to rain havoc on us and the region. That's the goal. I hope the people will choose wisely.
The U.S. State Department urged Americans to leave Lebanon immediately as Hezbollah launched strikes on Israel, prompting retaliatory Israeli airstrikes that killed at least 31 people and wounded 149, according to Lebanon's health ministry. The security situation was described as volatile, with airstrikes reported in Beirut, southern Lebanon, and the Bekaa Valley. Americans were advised not to travel to Lebanon and to avoid the U.S. Embassy. Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that the UK will deploy Ukrainian drone defense experts to the Middle East to help Gulf partners counter Iranian drone attacks, while allowing the U.S. to use British bases for strikes on Iranian missile sites. Starmer said Britain would not join offensive operations, but framed the move as protecting British citizens and allies.
This is what I've done, and I stand by it. But, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that Iran's outrageous response has become a threat to our people, our interests, and our allies, and it cannot be ignored. Iran has lashed out across the region. They've launched hundreds of missiles and thousands of drones at countries which did not attack them, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, Bahrain, and Oman. And overnight, Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, launched attacks on Israel, seeking to escalate the war. Mr. Speaker, there are an estimated 300,000 British citizens in the regions, residents, families on holiday, and those in transit. Iran has hit airports and hotels where British citizens are staying. It is deeply concerning for the whole House and the whole country.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Four headlines from here in Washington that I think are really important. First, a stunning statement from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth.
America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history, all on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars.
No stupid rules of engagement, says the man in charge of America's military. He appears to be abandoning the principle that underpins the military doctrine of Western democracies, that you adhere to rules of engagement in a way that your enemy does not. This is a stunning shift in US military operational practice.
Yes, right there. Yes, sir.
The second headline, which I think articulates so clearly the strain between America and its allies, in particular the UK, and this so-called special relationship. Listen to this.
Capable partners are good partners.
He's talking about Israel there, then.
Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force.
That's the blunt consequence of the judgment made by the British government that Trump's action over the weekend in Iran was not in line with international law. Starmer said no to the US use of UK bases for the initial attack. The Americans are furious. It is a real test of the special relationship.
Yes, right here.
And the third headline, Hegseth was offered the chance to rule out US boots on the ground inside Iran, but he didn't take it.
Are there currently any American boots on the ground in Iran?
No, but we're not going to go into the exercise of what we will or will not do.
He left open the possibility of this shifting to a ground war, and I think that's hugely significant. And in a separate interview with the New York Post, the president said he won't rule out sending US troops into Iran. Of course, that's kind of the core of Trump's style, never to rule anything out.
Thank you very much.
But to Americans uneasy about all this, Trump told the New York Post, "I don't care about polling, I have to do the right thing."
Let me provide a brief update on Operation Epic Fury.
Now, the last thing is the mixed messaging. The core objectives seem to be relatively clear.
First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities. Second, we're annihilating their neighbors. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders.
But what's the path to achieve those aims? Who fills the vacuum? Is this regime change, or is it just regime alteration? Or maybe just regime collapse and good luck to the Iranians? None of that is clearly articulated by the president or his team, and there are always unintended consequences.
Welcome to the Protagonists on the World Today. Nice to have your company. And is the world heading for World War III? We'll talk about that in this hour. But undoubtedly, unmistakably so, the nightmare has begun. And as we brace for the unknown and the undoubted economic fallout from the current conflict, we can only wonder, did Donald Trump lose his mind last week? I hear the peanut gallery saying yes. His strategy of decapitating a large proportion of the Iranian leadership during Ramadan and expecting those next in line to come back to the negotiating table appears to be a crazy losing bet. Iran's president said Khamenei's killing is an open declaration of war against Muslims, particularly the Shia. He said, quote, "The tragic event is the greatest trial facing the Islamic world today." Khamenei held the Iranian Revolutionary Guards back. Now he's gone. The revolutionaries are unleashed. In my opinion, no one can tell 15 million revolutionaries to stop. Iran's reaction to the strike, including attacking their Arab neighbours who hosted US bases, surprised many. These bases have been evacuated, and there have been complaints the Americans have left their Arab allies to fend for themselves in favour of Israel, which is now taking more and more direct hits from Iranian ballistic missiles. I read somewhere where they were not guessing, but were saying that Iran fired off all its old missiles first, therefore Israel used all its new ones to defend Israel, and now a new wave will occur featuring the brand new, the more deadlier missiles from Iran. Only time will tell if that is correct. Expansion of the war is expected. Of some concern is not only the stance of Sir Keir Starmer, but the state of readiness of the UK's Defence Force and its ability to deal with the current calamity. I mean, let's face it, you had trouble stopping dinghies coming over from Europe with illegal immigrants. Good luck with a real war. Now, the British base in Cyprus looks adequate, or lacks adequate air defences and limited means to fight back. The Royal Navy has only 3 warships available for deployment, and none appear to be in the region. Britain used to have a large naval presence in the Gulf with 1 or 2 warships operating out of Bahrain in addition to other support ships, but today there are none. Now we've got to shake our heads about the most vociferous of warmongers. It is very, very, very scary. Now, where does our panel see things heading in the next few weeks and beyond? I think they're saying, or Trump's saying, 4 or 5 weeks. No, not with 15 million Iranian guards. I mean, jeepers, they are well armed. They have enormous firepower. They have a huge arsenal. And for anyone to think that this will go for 4 or 5 weeks, unless there's a brokered deal, they're in a land of their own, floating around in some cybersphere, wondering, is Mary Poppins real? Are we hoping for a miracle to get the US and its allies out of this mess? Or the cynics might say, this is part of a larger campaign of destruction. Now, our panel is Matt Nielsen, geopolitical analyst, Robin Tilbrook, chairman of the English Democrats, and Dr. Greg Simons, geopolitical commentator. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. First of all, Matt, tell us just a quick summary of how you see things at the moment. And 15 million, that's a pretty strong fighting force, along with the military hardware that they have. Anybody, except for a politician that thinks they can finish this in a few weeks, does not know what wars do. Wars, once started, go in a direction they want to go and not what a politician wants the war to go.
That is so very true. And being a legal historian, I can just say that, as always in wars, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And right now it's only the worst of times. On Friday, we were told this was going basically to be a weekend war. They'd kill Khamenei and the people would rise up. On Saturday, we were told it was going to be a 4-day war. People might need some encouragement in Iran, and we have the best interest of the Iranian people in mind. Then we came to Sunday. Suddenly, it was a 4-week war. There were a few Americans dead. They weren't really sure what was going to come next. There might perhaps be a civil war in Iran. And then suddenly, yesterday on Monday, we were on boots on the ground. Now, I mean, from a weekend war to boots on the ground in 4 days, it's a very stark assessment of how a military escalation happens when you drastically underestimate the adversary's resilience and the complexity of a military operation. And this always happens. So, I mean, it's a textbook example of a policy built on fundamentally flawed intelligence and historical misunderstandings of the dynamics of a war situation. So it's I'm just feeling profoundly saddened by the utter stupidity of the Trump administration and the Israeli government at this point.
Robert Tilbrook, the behaviour of, I would say, your Prime Minister would seem that the beautiful relationship you have, or America has, with the UK, has some holes in it, a bit like Swiss cheese. What is the reaction of the good folk of the UK towards the actually pathetic leadership from Keir Starmer?
Yes, I think people do think it can't even really be called leadership at all, I don't think. But you've got to bear in mind that between the Conservatives and Labour, they have degraded our ability to do anything militarily anyway, to the point, as you were saying earlier, there's only 3 ships in the Royal Navy that could be deployed to the area. Not one of those is an aircraft carrier, so in fact, there's almost nothing that British forces could do. And I don't think that the Trump administration took Starmer or his government into their confidence in the first place, and rightly so. I think Starmer, after all, has been trying to hand over one of the key bases that would have been relevant to this, Diego Garcia, in the middle of the Pacific. And he's been trying to hand that over to Mauritius, which is more or less an ally of China. So he's not somebody that the Trump administration would consider to be really an ally. In any case, I suppose you've got to look in sort of geopolitical terms about the position of the United Kingdom, which is that we are not really equal allies, and we are much more a sort of subordinate part of a sort of American empire. And the Americans here are behaving in some ways similar to the way that British Empire behaved. So if you think back to Lord Palmerston's famous saying when people were furious about an attack on Greece, he said that the Royal Navy was there to protect British interests all around the world, and quoted the Roman line about "I am a Roman citizen," as I'm a British citizen, and therefore we are going to defend with the use of gunboat diplomacy British interests all around the world. I think that's sort of what you're getting happening here. You're getting an imperial policy. It's a forward imperial policy rather than a defensive one. We are not at a point where we can understand or have any ability to project what's going to happen here. I mean, one of the things I find odd in the way that the discussions are going or what publicity we're getting, there doesn't seem to be any plan as to what Iran's going to look like after all this has happened. There doesn't seem to have been any attempt to build a government in exile or anything like that. So, in the absence of that kind of plan, we've got no idea how this is going to develop.
Greg, what's your thoughts? And I've just been sent some notification that they're going to have I can't even bring it up, isn't that terrible? Here we are. I'll just read this to you first. Iran deploys military assets and prepares for a tanker war, which is not great. Israeli experts are now sounding the alarm. Iranian cluster missiles can split into as many as 80 sub-missiles, hitting multiple targets at the same time. They're calling it an unprecedented weapon. So if you're a bunch of ships in the Straits of Hormuz or whatever close by, and they want to say, let's get all 80 ships or 50 ships, they could do it with one missile. Now, when they say they're calling it an unprecedented weapon, that's from the West. I know you're a fan of Donald Trump, but I have to ask you this: do you think this time he sort of lost the plot? Surely the military, with their scenarios, would have worked this out beforehand, because this is not going to finish unless they have a broker a peace deal. It will not finish in 3, 4, or 5 weeks. It could very well go on for months. And if you put troops on the ground, boots on the ground, you're going to have a very, very long war with many, many thousands of casualties on the west side. So, first of all, your thoughts on what has transpired so far, and where do you think this is heading?
Okay, I think they got the the name of this military operation wrong. It shouldn't be Operation Epic Fury. As some have noted, it should be Operation Epstein's Fury. And one can certainly see that, because, I mean, he has been pressured. He's been played. He is definitely the wife in the relationship with Netanyahu. I mean, this is absolutely clear. And it's unusually politically incorrect of me to say, but, well, it has to be said. And, I mean, yeah, as Matt's said, I mean, it's gone from a couple of days to 4 or 5 weeks, and it's going to continue to go up, because Donald Trump spent his whole life trying to avoid serving in the military. He has no idea what it's like to serve in the military. And the garbage he said today, I think today or yesterday, that the United States has munition stocks like the world has never seen before. There's never been so much, blah, 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 all this hyperbolic verbal diarrhea. And yeah, I mean, this is going to be proven to be yet another lie. And to think, I mean, they really don't understand this Persian culture, and especially this Shia understanding, because Shia are used to the concept of martyrdom. I mean, you heard what the Ayatollah Khamenei said before his death. He said he's not going to run away. This coming conflict is not about his life. It's not about the life of Iran, but about the continuation of Islam. And compare that with Bibi, who took off as fast as he could in his wings of whatever, Xeon or whatever it was, and left his citizens to face the music which he began. And you can see the difference between that. And I mean, to kill 165 schoolgirls from third, fourth grade, I mean, do you think that's going to... You're not going to have to worry about 15 million militia. You have to worry about 93 million people who are absolutely had it with Trump and Netanyahu and their perfidy. I mean, this is the second time that they have launched a sneak attack under the guise of diplomacy and negotiation. But this time, they bettered it. They did this during Ramadan, and they murdered the Ayatollah. I mean, it's a bit like, would they expect Roman Catholics to roll over if they murdered the Pope during Lent? It doesn't. It doesn't work this way. It hardens the resolve. And to bomb a civilian population, it's never worked in history. It didn't work during the London Blitz in 1940. It didn't work against Nazi Germany, and it's not going to work against Iran. You have got a very determined and united Iranian people, and you've seen their military capability so far, and they are prepared to take the costs of war. But they know that time is on their side. It's not on the side of Israel. It's not on the side of the US.
Matt, and I look at this. If you think of a bus, you know, those mountain roads, and they've got nowhere to go on the left-hand side, and they're just slowly going up the mountain, and they're almost slipping over. That's how I look at so world peace. And anyway, Donald Trump is the one that, you know, he's the stick of dynamite that's on that path, and it explodes, and all of a sudden the bus has got nowhere to go. It just veers to the left and it tumbles over. And so the world, using that example, the world has fallen into this great crevice of this black hole, and they're never going to get out of it, because at the moment, as rightly so, as Greg said, forget the 15 million, you know, troops, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, forget them. 93 million are very, very unhappy. I need to ask you a couple of questions then. First of all, the position of Russia and China. How much will they lend a hand to Iran? And the turmoil that has been created, can we ever come back from that? Because I see this as like an avalanche. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes along. Are we ever going to get out of this mess for quite a while? And what will Russia and China do? Because they're sort of just sitting back at the moment, not happy, but they are sitting back at the moment. When they become part of this stoush, the whole thing changes. And I read somewhere where they said this could very well be the start of World War III, if not already.
I would like to correct you there. China is by no means sitting back. Mm-hmm. China is always working, but they're doing it in a way, in a mechanical sort of way, behind the scenes, as they always do. They have their goals, they quietly strive to achieve them. Because if we zoom out for a second, Trump has had, or the Trump administration, I'm not sure that Trump is in total control of all this, but anyway, his administration has had a goal now, in my view, to obtain a kind of proxy control over oil and gas reserves, so that these reserves can be weaponized as a leverage against China, and trying to thereby to coerce China into accepting an American hegemony. Because if you look at the actions in Venezuela, if you look at the American involvement in Nigeria, which is often forgotten when you're looking at the oil situation, look at Nigeria and how American interests have been working to create a bit of a havoc in Nigeria as well. Both Nigeria and Venezuela are exporters of energy and oil to China, but the most important exporter of oil to Southeast Asia and Asia is, of course, Iran. Now, with US influence over Venezuela and possibly over Iran's and Nigeria's energy exports and trade tied with China, this could easily be weaponized by way of threats of curtailment or cutoffs in parallel with pressure upon American Gulf allies to do the same in vis-a-vis China. So trying to coerce China into a kind of indefinite union partnership status vis-a-vis the United States, and trying to force a loop-sided trade deal onto the Chinese. Obviously, China is very well aware of this US strategy, and it's going to work hard to go against it. So I would say that this is one of the reasons why China has publicly stated that they are giving technical and military support to Iran. Of course, mostly in form of intelligence, and they're still trying to avoid to get directly involved in the conflict. But there is definitely a situation where China is sending loitering munitions, air defense systems, and so on to Iran as we speak. Because China knows that if Iran falls, they will be in a very dire situation. And forcing China's hand like this might well end up as by China saying, okay, if you're blocking shipping and if you're causing oil shipments to stop, we're going to set up, we're going to stop Taiwan from exporting what you need. So there might well be a situation where China ramps up its intention to occupy or reclaim Taiwan. So we're, like you say, we haven't gone over the cliff, but the bus has most definitely stopped. And this stick of dynamite that has blown a hole in the road, there is right now a situation where will the rest of the road collapse, or will there be a situation where we can start to rebuild the road? Currently, the road is quickly collapsing because once the bullet starts flying, every war becomes, it goes out of control very quickly.
Matt, just hang with me for a second. I read, and I spoke about it a while ago, where a survey and a report had come out that something like 85 or 70, 87% of, and you don't know how true it was, but 87% of people in Iran did not want a regime change, contrary to what Western media was saying. And, it's obviously an information operation of some sort. But the report was not part of that. Anyway, somebody asked me to if I could find that review, and I found one 2018 from RT, and they said it was Western propaganda, American propaganda, but that was 7-8 years ago. And I couldn't find the other story, and I wasn't making it up because I actually read it, so I would imagine it's been removed. Do you know any report or of any study or survey prior to the attack by, and probably illegal attack too, by the Americans in Israel on Iran? Do you know of any survey or report that says that the great majority of people living in Iran did not want a regime change? And have you heard anything along those lines, or was it just an anomaly on my part that I just saw something and it's gone? Because when you hear the Western media saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to bust it open, save the world from this tyrant, I saw the video and they said, thousands. There was, if you're talking about a Tommy Robinson protest, this was up there with that. There would have been 1 or 2 million people who were mourning the loss of Khamenei.
Well, from what I've read and from the anecdotal evidence that I have gained from a lot of my Iranian friends, dear friends in Europe, and some in Iran as well proper, the love of the regime isn't that great. However, the worst thing you can do is attack a nation, because that instantaneously psychologically unites any people. Now it happens everywhere. It just like it did, with the Ukrainian-Russian war on both sides. So once the other nation enters your territory, it unites, and it's very simple. I mean, Iran, the ancient name of the region, the land of the Aryans, has been rapidly ascending in recent time. It's accelerated into the 21st century and is a dominant power in the Persian Gulf region. So even though you might not dislike the Ayatollah, the regime, you can still feel a certain national pride, because I mean, Iranians, it's an intelligent, it's a resourceful, it's a very proud people with a very long and impressive history. So the citizens of Iran, they can differentiate between being Iranian and currently living under a regime with ayatollahs. But now that they're feeling an outside threat and a real possibility that their nation might disintegrate, most people, even if they are in opposition to the Ayatollah, will still fall in line and say it's better to have the Ayatollah, it's better to have a united Iran than a fragmented, destroyed Iran, given the proud history that they can fall back on. So psychologically, Israel has made a huge mistake. I mean, if anything, they should have continued with their covert operation to quietly destabilize the regime. That might have eventually worked if they had done it over a continuous amount of years. But they don't think in years. They wanted it done now. And it's detrimental to the situation and to the peace in the region, and dare I say, even the peace of the world at current.
Robin, I've seen reports that that they can send missiles from big ones too from Iran, and they can reach. I think some have said the US, others have said also reach the UK. If the Brits get involved up to the necks in this stoush with Iran, and you send troops on the ground and stuff, this is way different than Afghanistan and Iraq. They couldn't fire missiles back, but Iran can, with the 15 million troops or as Greg said, the 93 million who are very, very unhappy at the moment. Is the UK prepared for a war? Do the people want a war? And are you, yourself, for example, are you ready for the loss of many good soldiers or military personnel that will be killed in a war?
So, I mean, certainly the British Armed Forces are not in a position to get involved in this at all. The fact is, we're at a point where we couldn't put a single division into the field, that means, in effect, we couldn't do anything useful anyway, even if we had a prime minister who wanted to. I would have to take a bit of an issue with what Mats was saying, because I wouldn't regard Iran as a sort of full nation state. What's happened there is that it's a creation of the post First World War settlement, and you've got bits of other ethnic groups in there, like for instance the Kurds, for example. There's a fairly large population of Kurds in one part of what could have been Kurdistan, and they certainly don't support the Iranian revolutionary system. And there are various other ethnic groups there who are not supportive. I think, so far as actual Persians are concerned, which is the historic entity, the Persians are, I think, fairly dubious about whether the Iranian revolutionary Muslim revolutionary system was in their interests. I know quite a few who their view is that it's been an absolute nightmare to be there in that country. And I think that we saw that fairly recently with fairly widespread protests, and what the Revolutionary Guards were doing was that they were basically shooting down the crowds and murdering anybody that they captured. So I mean, I don't think that is an indicator that Iran is in any way united behind this regime. However, we are at a very early stage of this operation, shall we call it that, and it's impossible to say how it will turn out. And in that respect, I do think it's a big gamble. I understand that the American armed forces have, however, concentrated in the area, so that there's quite a depth of so-called assets in the area. I don't know whether the Americans have actually managed to replenish their armory, because they had, after all, handed over quite a lot of weapons to the Ukrainians. And at one point, we thought that the Americans only had enough weapons for 2 or 3 weeks. If that proves to be the case, then this will be an unmitigated disaster. If in fact they have replenished their arsenal, maybe they will be able to attack regime targets to the point where it is possible for the Iranians to overthrow the regime, and at that point, the operation will have been successful. I think. I do think that the China question is important, because I do feel that Iran was obviously part of the states that were in opposition to American dominance in the world, and a key part. But of course, Iran was geographically isolated from the other two. So if you cut off access by sea to Iran, I'm not sure to what extent either Russia or China can actually reinforce Iran.
What about the same with you, Robin? Here, what about the if the ante is upped and you have the UK moving into from war readiness to being in a war? Does the UK really want to go to war? I mean, Starmer's been itching for a battle ever since he got in. Picked out his own people first of all, then he thought he'd go against that terrible Russians, he all got gold teeth, and all that sort of stuff. Now you have a stoush happening in Iran. Do they really want to go to war? I mean, take Starmer out of the equation, which would be fantastic in any case. But then are they also prepared for the losses that you will suffer?
Well, if Starmer does go, it's by no means certain that will be a good thing, because we might get somebody who's even worse, given the range of choices that there are. But the British, I don't think British people, generally speaking, have got no strong views about this. It's definitely a faraway place of which we know little, as far as the British public is concerned. I have seen there's been quite a few celebrations by Iranian exiles in Britain that's been reported by the mainstream media. I don't actually know how many Iranian exiles we've got in Britain, but quite a few, I think. But they are not influential. They wouldn't be able to persuade the British government to do something about this. And in any case, even if the British government did want to do something about it, I think there's very little they could do.
Greg, here's a question for you. Is Trump's language likely to appeal to Iran and bring them back to the negotiating table?
No, in short. And he definitely drew the short straw in intellectual capacity and capability, that's for sure. He doesn't appeal to them at all. he is definitely intellectually challenged. He lives in his own little bubble. Anyone who doesn't say something he doesn't like gets shipped off, like that general recently who told him it'd be a bad idea to go after Iran. And I mean, they despise him. They see him as a lackey of Netanyahu and the Zionists. And one can certainly see this. I mean, at the one stage, he seemed to be a little bit reluctant and kicking the can down the road about starting this war. But then, of course, I mean, you had these videos of surfacing of him where he is seen buddy with Epstein, something he's denied. And of course, the implication is uh, these are the palatable video, audio visual material of him. So, and I mean, the point is, when he was standing there during the beginning of the attack, he did not look like a person who was confident. He looked like a person who was broken and forced into doing something he didn't want to do. And Iranians just in Iran despise him. I mean, he's been responsible for murdering 165 elementary school girls. He's also murdered uh, girls' volleyball teams. He's targeting civilians as well as this so-called decapitation strikes, and just bombing. They're doing what they usually do. Israel and the US, they're bombing civilian targets left, right, and centre. This never bodes well. And Iranians, I mean, as Robin said, they're not a nation state, they're a civilizational state. I mean, not all parts have the same adherence to it, but I mean, if we look, you mentioned the Kurdish part, I mean, that's going to be a problem for Turkey. Turkey is not going to want Iran to disintegrate because it's had Iraq disintegrate, it's had Syria disintegrate. I mean, its border security along the southern and eastern borders is, from a Turkish perspective, utterly compromised because of US regime changes. So, I mean, this is not only in the interests of Iran not to disintegrate, because I mean, what it would unleash would be quite catastrophic for the region. We've seen what the US has done with Libya, with Iraq, and with these other states. I mean, and you heard, I mean, everyone's favourite warmonger, Lindsey Graham, and as well as Pete Hegseth. I mean, oh, we don't own what we break. That's someone else's responsibility. We just wash our hands of it and be gone. And of course, Iranians understand this. They've seen what's happened to other countries democratized and liberated by the US.
And the just again staying with you for a second, Greg, the US might has been on display, and unfortunately they shot down 3 of their own planes, which doesn't bode well for those. You're going over to the Middle East to fight for the free world. No, I'm not. I'm not your shooter. Mats, can I ask you just the advice that Donald Trump has been getting? If you look at it's like a celebrity war cabinet. Pete Hegseth moving from I know he's had military service, but moving from being a news anchor to the Secretary of War. We had Dan Bongino, a podcaster deciding and TV host, deciding to vacate the scene because it was too hard. And then we have Kash Patel. You know, I would dare think that. I mean, and Greg was talking about the IQ. I mean, the collective. I won't say intelligence here, but the collective appreciation of the rest of the world. When you have to rely on news anchors and podcasters to be your analyst and an advisory panel to decide whether you want to create World War III or not, it doesn't look good, does it? Do you think, first of all, if you had the ear of Donald Trump, would you be saying they need to go back to TV land and get some real people in?
Well, the interesting thing is what these real people are. I mean, what's happening now? It's always good for certain individuals, and you can see this persistent failure of strategic planning. It's perhaps something that can be discussed. However, the outcome of a situation with a weakened Iran is something that it would be very welcomed by Israel. Now, I mean, you have to look at decisive victories. They never really appear, but there might be other goals that will be there. So if the people behind the scenes, if the so-called hidden agenda is laid bare, we can see that the goal probably is to weaken Iran, and the end goal is to have Iran, like was stated before by Mr. Tilbrook, to fragmentize Iran into these different groups of Kurdish people, of Baluchistanians, of Pakistanis, because then with a weak Iran, you can control Iran, or at least you can count Iran out of the current power equation in the region. Now, this would be very good for Israel. It would be very good for perhaps Saudi Arabia, but it would be splendid for the United States in relation to China. So I think the people surrounding Trump is probably just voicing the opinions of others who have told them what opinions to voice. And I think Rubio said that. Rubio said this last night or this morning, depending on where you are in the world, that America struck Iran because Israel was going to strike Iran, and therefore America had to go along with it. It's to make a kind of preemptive strike, as he said. So I think the people surrounding Trump, they're doing as best as they can in relation to the end goal. And I do believe that the end goal is not to liberate Iran or to bring democracy to Iran. The end goal currently, from the Western perspective, is to fragmentize Iran and make Iran weak. And then just disengage from it. Create a new Libya, if you wish. So I don't think it really matters what these blabbering fools really say that surround Trump, because they're just voicing the opinions of others.
And they haven't got that experience. I don't care what they say. They are. I mean, I look at Pam Bondi, which I don't like anymore. I used to think she's quite a good-looking person, but I think she's out of her league. I look at Hegseth. I look at Kash Patel. Dan Bongino admits it just wasn't for him. And there's a sort of a similarity, Matt, isn't there, between from the first term of Donald Trump, he listened to all the wrong people. And now we have a similar situation, but this time I would dare say that the stakes are much higher, because we are talking about a possible World War III. Whether that happens, whether they push that barrow a bit more, and trying to control a war. You cannot control wars. Wars go wherever they want to go. Robin, can I ask you what your thoughts are on the possibility of ever being a Gaza peace plan and a peace board? Because, I mean, anything that Donald Trump at the moment sets up, and I'm not just being anti-Donald Trump here, but anything that he touches, you have to wonder whether you're going to see tomorrow, because we'll all meet in that building. You just go in there, we'll give you a call. Oh, look outside. And so he has a habit of trying to eliminate people who he's negotiating with. So if he is trying to set up a peace board or a Gaza peace plan, there would have to be grave doubts about the success of that.
I would have thought that any talk about that has been buried by what's now happening with Iran. And I do think that the Israeli involvement in the decision-making process to attack Iran is absolutely essential to, it's essential to consider that as part of the framework of why we are where we are. Iran is is much more important to Israel than it is really to most Western countries, and it's their sort of terrorist attacks and working towards trying to undermine Israel was much more an immediate focus of the Iranian regime, and so the Israelis have a strong interest in trying to degrade Iran's power. It is worth, I think, in terms of unforeseen consequences, to consider the attack some while back on Iraq. Iraq was attacked on the basis that it was a threat to, at least in part, it was a threat to Israel. And of course, what actually happened was that it turned out that Iraq was the main force that was keeping Iran in check. And so attacking Iraq actually undermined Israeli security rather than helping it. So we've now got a sort of replay, as it were, or consequence of knocking out Iraq. I think it's that the fact that those are interconnected shows just how complicated it is to try and change geopolitics, and in particular to change what's going on in the Middle East, where most of the Western decision makers have very little understanding, I think, of the cultures in the Middle East. And I do remember the neocons around Bush thinking that if you got rid of Saddam Hussein's regime, that the Iraqis would suddenly want to become little middle American Democrats or Republicans. When the regime was destroyed, what happened was that all the ancient hatreds came out, and people began to kill each other.
We are going to run out of time soon, but I want to have a quick chat to Greg, and then we'll get a final conclusion to this discussion. Just got a message from ex-TNT host James Freeman, and he has a picture of Greg will appreciate the humour here. There's a picture of Starmer there with his hands together praying, and the prayer is, "Please stop bombing British military bases. It's against international law." That'll show them. So I think, and I think Robin is very lucky to have Keir Starmer as his inspirational leader. Not really. Sorry about that, Greg. Where do you see? I mean, just following on from Robin's comments on the Gaza peace plan and the peace board, and I agree. By the way, I think that's no chance of a snowflake in hell of ever happening, or for a long time anyway. What happens to Gaza?
Well, it's out of the headlines for now. It's disappeared, but that doesn't mean the genocide and ethnic cleansing has stopped. It just means it's no longer in the headlines, and this has been quite convenient for Israel. We can also see that Israel has also stepped up the ethnic cleansing in West Bank. So you had the settlers moving in there and removing Palestinians from their homes and taking over those homes. So, I mean, you have this Greater Israel project, which is still going ahead, and it's using these distractions to do so. And, I mean, while you have such wonderful leaders as Keir Starmer and so forth, And I'm sure that Keir Starmer will, after all of this, might need to fall back on his Ukrainian rent boys and for a bit of solace. And hopefully they will stop attempting to burn his vehicles and properties as a result, so it can bring him some peace of mind. But you've got these ones like Trump and Netanyahu. They're in their own world, and their own world is increasingly divorced from the rest of the world. I mean, one of the things here, which you see in Bangladesh, is that the people on the street overwhelmingly support Iran. And it's not Shia. And Iran is living up to what they said they would do if the attack occurred. And they said it would be a regional war. They've lived up to their promise, unlike many politicians or leaders from the free world. And what we also see, I mean, the murder of the Ayatollah Khamenei during Ramadan and the attack on civilians has not only made this a regional war, it's made it a religious war as well. And you can see what the consequences are in Pakistan, in Iraq, in Lebanon, Yemen, and so forth. And yeah, I mean, it's very unpopular. You mentioned those F-15s which were taken down by Kuwait, by the local air defence friendly fire. Did you see the video where one of the pilots had just parachuted down, and one of the locals was threatening him with a stick? So he had to do a bit of sweet talking to prevent a beating from one of the locals.
I come in peace. Well, I come to make you into pieces. But that's it. I know it's friendly fire and stuff, which is not really friendly if you're the pilot. But to lose, what are they, Matt? Those planes that went down, they're worth billions, aren't they? Am I incorrect?
Of course, they're worth billions, and always in wars, it's the military-industrial complex that benefits. It's been this way since the beginning, since basically the war in South Africa, the First and Second Boer War, where financial interests started to look into what can we gain from this war. I mean, you can go further back as well. You can go back to the East India Company if you want to look at profits and war. Of course, these planes, they were shot down. They need to be replaced, as argued. But this is a situation where, once again, Iran will win. I mean, they have tens of thousands of fly-by-wire drones. Should United States ever put boots on the ground in Iran, it would be a slaughter, because Iran has perfected the ability to a very relatively cheap amount of investment, or a relatively low investment cost, be able to put up a staunch defense. United States is dependent on very high-end, costly military procurements to sustain their military. And with this difference in military capability, Iran will always come out on perhaps not the winning side, but they definitely will not be defeated in any easy way, because the electorate in America will feel the pain of a squeezed energy situation. Once inflation strikes, once they notice that the money that they're paying in taxes is going back to subsidizing the military-industrial profits, they will eventually revolt, just like they did during the Vietnam era. So it's a very dangerous game for America to be playing right now.
While you're there, Matt, and I'll just move along to ask you this question. And you mentioned the economic, it's going to be a disaster right around the world. Look at oil, inflation, interest rates, global economic growth will take a real hit. It's moving quickly, isn't it, away from a local conflict just involving the Middle East is, you can see it quite quickly becoming a global conflict, if not just military, at least economically. Where do you see this, again, as I said, wars and the tentacles of wars go in all sorts of areas. We can't control it. Where do you think, from the just looking at the whole kit and caboodle, looking at this megalomaniac president, and he is the advice he's been given, looking at the fanatical military of and the very efficient military, the people of Iran wanting not for anyone to attack it. How do you see the next stage of this? Do you see it becoming a fully fledged global war conflict? Because, as you mentioned, China is not happy. You see Russia get those involved, and all of a sudden we are in that bus, aren't we, about to topple over. And once it topples over, there's a very small chance of coming back unless we're all carrying parachutes. How do you see us heading? Where do you see us heading?
I see us heading into economically an economic global conflict over resources, because what's happening now, Iran is not seeking an off-ramp anymore. There's basically no going back to negotiating tables for Iran, because one of the last orders that was given when the missile struck, or the written orders that had been given before Khamenei was killed or assassinated, was that each local leader, military commander, will now continue striking where it's possible for as long as he can. Meaning there is no off-ramp anymore. So this war will just continue until you can once again have a unified chain of command in Iran. I don't know how long that's going to take. So now it's a very high risk that the United States is no longer able to force Iran to any negotiating table. So Iran is simply digging in for the long haul, and it doesn't want to blow off all its missiles too early. So it's going to continue this for as long as it can. And every day that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, every day will be a squeeze for China, for Southeast Asia, and especially for Europe, given how the stupidity with Europe has been working for the last years, alienating Russia. And dare I say, also for the United States. So we're heading into a global conflict where every nation will be scrambling to secure different resources where they're based. So I think the next area of conflict will most definitely be the Arctic, where Russia, Canada, United States, and Europe will be fighting over, or squabbling over, where they can find oil under the melting ice. This is not going to end. We are not going to go back to anything that looks pre-2001, when all this started. We're now in it for the long haul. This is going to be one of those, the 30 years war of the 21st century is probably what historians in 200 years' time, if there is still historians left then, but in 200 years' time, they're going to look back at this era and say, oh, that's when the 30-year war, global war started, unfortunately.
Robin Tilbrook, same question, but the world is changing at this rapid rate, isn't it? And it's faster than I ever thought. And you look at those, the sci-fi movies from 15 years ago, they're real now. They have exactly that weaponry. They have the artificial intelligence. Two things. The first question, what happens next with Iran? And another one for you to give us your views. Do you think we'll ever get back to being what, for example, in the UK, what the UK used to be? Or is that gone forever? and welcome to the brave new world.
Yes, those are very big questions. I think Matt's made a point that he was talking about the way that defence now works, because I think one of the things that we've seen in the Ukraine war is that the balance of defence as against offence on the battlefield has changed again, and we now have a situation with the drone clouds that are dominant over the battlefield. That defence has again become the dominant force on the battlefield. And what that means, of course, to any talk about American boots on the ground in Iran, is that they would actually be vulnerable. They would be likely to sustain huge casualties, as the Ukrainians and indeed the Russians have found on the battlefield in the Ukraine. So I'm not sure that we would see anything that was stabilising at all in the region if that happened. As far as what's going to happen in Britain is concerned, that is very difficult. We've just had a by-election in which the Muslim vote was orchestrated in such a way as to ensure the Green candidate won, so our politics is becoming that of ethnic conflict, and I think that is something that we're all probably going to have to live with.
Greg, before we get into it, Jerry at 5955, one of our making a comment, one of our sites, says most Western people have a degree of cognitive dissonance in relation to Iran and the war. Very few agree with an Islamic totalitarian system, but most don't agree with the invading that state. Just a reply to that, and also your thoughts on where we go to from now. Do you, being serious, remove that poster of Donald Trump that you have on your ceiling?
Well, it depends which kind of poster you mean. There are some really juicy.
I'm not going there at all.
There are some really X-rated, juicy ones which have popped up recently, involving the, should we say, domination of Donald Trump by Netanyahu, where Donald Trump is the wife. So, yes. So, yeah, there's a lot of those. But, yeah, I mean, most people do not understand Iran because they try to understand it from a nation state. It's not a nation state. And this Shia influence is very important to them. I mean, it would be insane to put boots on the ground. It was stupid putting them on in Iraq. And that was done at a time when the West had a much greater level of readiness and capability and capacity in their armed forces. I mean, Britain kind of had something of a military at that stage. I mean, the US, I mean, you can see with the Gerald Ford, I mean, you got sailors popping T-shirts into the toilet system. I mean, that shows you that it's not only about military assets, how much you have, but the willingness of those who are manning those military assets to fight and die for the degenerates who are in power and waging this war. And on the issue of Russia and China, I mean, they're getting a bit of payback now. I mean, if we look at the recent drone attack on the RAF base in Cyprus, they discovered one of the chips was powered by GLONASS. That's the Russian global satellite system. So the Russians are flipping the middle finger. You do it to us, we can do it to you. And the Chinese are providing fantastic satellite imagery of the destruction of US bases throughout West Asia at a time when you have Donaldo Trumpo going on about that there's very little damage, and I mean, they're utterly showing them up. And yeah, I mean, if this goes on, for example, it's the West that has the inability for a long war. This is why you had this talk about 2 days, 4 days to begin with. This was wishful but very delusional thinking, which was not grounded in reality. And anyone who gave them a dose of reality was fired and removed from their position. And so you have an echo chamber. No one's telling King Trump that he's wearing no clothes. And that, I mean, gives you an image that you will never be able to unsee. But it is as it is. They are detached from reality. Iranians are very much attached to reality. They've got their own way of life because for them, this is an existential war. For Israel, for the US, this is a war of choice. And so, I mean, the commitment to fight the war, if it's an existential one as opposed to war of choice, is always going to favour those fighting an existential war to put more effort in to the very end.
Yeah, I think my humble opinion is to everybody. I think we have he's been advised incorrectly. Because we've spoken to many military soldiers, airmen, and they all say that once a war starts, it goes where it wants to go. When you have a politician such as Donald Trump being advised by his news anchor, military guy, we got the podcaster becoming in charge of the FBI, all this sort of stuff. When you're being advised by these people with a very a lack of appreciation of what happens 10 steps in front, and when they come out and say we're going to finish this, as Greg said, in 4 days, 5 days, now it's a few weeks, it will finish when the war wants to finish, and the destruction in between, that is going to be part of war. And whether I think it will stay confined to the Middle East or whether it expands, I don't really know, but I would think it will get bigger before it gets smaller. Mats Nielsen, geopolitical analyst, thank you so much.
Could I just,
yes,
on a final note, which I've been thinking about now when you were talking at the end there is also a religious overtone to this, which I find.
Is. Yes.
I'm not feeling too comfortable with it because it's been confirmed that Hegseth has been at prayer meetings at the Pentagon with a preacher who've been saying that basically Trump is the anointed one. And this is something that has been reverberated through the ranks as well, that now it's a kind of a religious fight. It's the his cycle, it's a biblical prophecy thing. And once you add religion into the mix, it's not going to go down well. So I'm not saying this is a majority view. I'm not saying that it's gone through all of the American military stratas, but it's still there as an undertone, which we haven't seen in very many decades in the United States. So that's also something that we have to keep our focus on. Will there become more religious undertones and overtones to this war out of Washington? Then we can also begin to worry more than we're worrying at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that's our one of the major fears. If it becomes a religious war, I'm going to dig a big hole. I actually won't need to. I'll just get blown to bits. But a religious war does bring in the entire global community, doesn't it, Mats?
Yes, it's always. I mean, religion is always present in war because there are no atheists in foxholes, as we all know. But once it becomes part of the strategic narrative, as in a crusade-like mission to spread the word of the Bible or help the prophecy come true, then you're into areas where I personally rather not go. I would like to keep my religion as a private conviction.
Could I make a point in reply to that? Because the religious element was already there. I mean, that's what the Ayatollahs were all about. The whole point of the Islamic regime was the furtherance of Shiite Muslim creed, and it was the Ayatollahs who perfected the ideology of martyrdom as a way of fighting in the Iran-Iraq war. So to say that the religious element is a sort of Christian intervention, I think it's wrong. It started off as being an Islamic element.
Yes, yeah, of course. I never questioned that it's been present in Iran. What surprises me is now that it's being mirrored by Washington, and I just thought that Washington had developed from the stage of talking in these religious terms, and were holding out for a more secular view on why they were intervening against a religious state, given that America is not per definition a religious run nation. So of course Iran is what it is, but I was surprised to see that the narrative is starting to gain a foothold within the Christian community or evangelical community in the official Washington. That was my surprise, and something we should keep an eye out for.
Okay, Matt's why we're here. And I appreciate your time. It's been truly illuminating. Matt, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
No, I'm basically present on X mostly with Mazzy Nilsson, MAZZENILSSON. That's my main platform, basically.
And Robin Tilbrook, I know this off by heart, but I'll let you do it.
Yes, so I'm on Twitter, X as well, at Robin Tilbrook, and the English Democrats are EnglishDemocrats.party.
And Dr. Greg Simons. Do you have internet now?
Yeah, still, amazingly enough, one of the benefits of being in the jungle rather than the garden. But yeah, Propaganda in Focus, got a number of things there. ResearchGate, this is another platform where I use to spread my politically incorrect views.
As Dave Allen would say, may your God go with you. And I always wondered, Dave Allen, because I'm a Catholic, and he used to make jokes about, he was a Catholic too. I wonder where he is at the moment. We should do that one day, talk about where is Dave Allen? Is he on a hot rock, or is he floating around above us? I don't know, because he doesn't want to spill his scotch. And by the way, those who don't know who Dave Allen is, he was one of Ireland's and one of my favourite comedians, and used to make the Reverend Mother at school blush. So there you are. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been the Protagonists on The World Today. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Same telephone box, same altar, and same religion. Goodbye.